back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host. Alex is going to be joining us in this hour to talk about the fight that we now are in the middle of. Folks, it didn't end with the election. As you saw, it only stepped up. And this is a fight we can win. This is a fight that the other side has never had to document what they're saying. And now we can point at them and we can say the emperor has no clothes, the establishment press has no clothes. We're used to documenting what we're telling people because we know that there is a confirmation bias on the part of the public to believe what they're told on these news outlets that have been around for a long time. They've become prestigious because for a very long time, the major networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, even NPR, they were all saying the same thing, weren't they? They were saying exactly what the government was saying. And no matter how absurd it was, they could look at you, look right into that camera and say, that's the way it is. They would say that and people would believe that was the way that it was. And it wasn't. They were very selective about what they were reporting. They were telling you lies some of the time, not all of the time. It's important. When you're telling people lies and you're deceiving them, as we saw, you go back and look at the CIA documents, Operation Mockingbird, you saw how the upper echelons and the anchors of various news media were co-opted by the CIA to get out the stories that they wanted to get out. So it's very important when you're doing that, when you're lying to people, when you've got a propaganda organization, that you do tell people the truth from time to time. So yeah, they did tell the truth from time to time. There you go, Operation Mockingbird. That's something very important to understand, especially in this context. Because we are now, as I pointed out in one of the videos we did a couple of weeks ago, I said, this is Operation Mockingbird Part 2. This is on steroids now, folks. We now have the State Department having been given, and of course it was Republicans who were supporting this even more so, I think, than the Democrats. They gave $180 million, $160 million, that's 80 each year for 2 years, to the State Department to propagandize Americans. They're going to tell you what's real and what isn't. Do you really think that you can trust these people? Do you need somebody to think for you? No, you don't. You don't need somebody to think. You need a source that will give you a point of view. They'll tell you the facts, tell you what they think about it, and they will footnote it. That's what we do here at InfoWars. Now, Obama is saying that he doesn't think that he misunderestimated Putin. No, he didn't say that. That was George W. Bush. I've said that so many times that I can hardly say the word underestimated without saying misunderestimated. Now, he said he did not underestimate Putin. Well, I think he did. I think he did. I think you know what he really underestimated was the intelligence of the American public. I think he really underestimated the power of the still independent press and of social media. And I think Jeffrey Jackson had it right on target when he called that open source intelligence. The founders called it committees of correspondence. They would write stuff and they would send it around to each other by paper. As Donald Trump said, you can't trust a computer. If you got something important, write it down on paper and send it by a courier. You know, that's starting to get, that's true as well. Although he uses Twitter and electronic media very powerfully. You have to know when to use one and when to use the other. But Donald Trump is, Obama is saying that he doesn't think that he underestimated Putin. He says, I think that I underestimated the degree to which in this new information age it's possible to have an impact on our open societies, on our open systems. Now, I left out a little bit there. He said, where it's possible for misinformation, for cyber hacking and so forth to have an impact on our open societies, on our open systems. But see, what he really doesn't like is an open society. What he really doesn't like is an open system. And I want to go back 8 years ago to an op-ed piece. It was written by Nat Hithoff, who just died. This was January the 7th, 2009. At that point in time, Obama was president-elect. And the title of this article that he put in the Village Voice was Obama's Black Widow. He said, Barack Obama will be in charge of the biggest domestic and international spying operation in history. Its prime engine is the NSA, located in Fort Meade. The Baltimore Sun's national security correspondent said the colossal Cray computer, the supercomputer they have there, was codenamed Black Widow. And he said, how will President Barack Obama use it? Oh, boy. Did he ever use it? Did he ever use the 1917 Espionage Act? Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight on this Sunday, January 8th, 2017. We're 11 days out from President Trump, and he is going to hit the ground running. He has put together an entire slate of action. Alex Jones is going to be joining us sometime this hour, and he's going to break that down further. Everyone has geared up for the fight in a way that I've never seen before. But I was talking about, just before we went to break, I started to look at this article that came out 8 years ago. And this is from Nat Hithoff. And this is when President Obama was president-elect. It was this time 8 years ago, just before he was sworn in. And he called it Obama's Black Widow. And he was talking about the massive Cray supercomputer that was housed at the NSA in Maryland, talking about how it could do all these calculations and what would Barack Obama do with this. And he pointed out a little bit of the history of this. And it's important for us to see where this came from. Remember now, the FISA Act, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, that was put in place As a result of the hearings that we had in the 1970s with Frank Church and Congressman Pike, both the Senate and the House had hearings on how the CIA and the NSA were violating their legal briefs, what they were created to do. They were created to go after foreign governments, and instead they were going after American citizens. They were spying on Americans. How about that? Back in the 1970s. That was what started the Church and the Pike hearings. And what came out of those was the FISA Act, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, saying you're only going to do your surveillance on foreign individuals. That's why they're talking about a foreign tampering of our election. And so we're going to have Alex Jones. I was just giving a note. Alex Jones is going to be coming in about 5 minutes, so stay with us. I'm going to try to break this down in 5 minutes, what Nat Hithoff was telling us about Barack Obama 8 years ago. Now, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act was put in place, but in July of 2008, as Bush was getting ready to leave, what they did was they amended it. And they made it far more powerful, and they took away some of the things that had been there to control the CIA and the NSA. He said that the new Bush law provided a farcical judicial supervision over the NSA, and boy, is that the truth. It is absolute. Maybe we should call it, instead of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the Farcical Intelligence Surveillance Act. They can go in and get a search warrant for Mr. and Mrs. Verizon, as Rand Paul said. They can say, I want to look at everybody that is on Verizon. And they go into a single judge, and there is no adversary there on behalf of the people, because, you know, you would, if you were actually going after an individual, like the Constitution said, that you go to get a search warrant, you say, this is what I'm looking for, this is who I'm looking at, and this is where I'm going to look for it. And you could have somebody that was representing Mr. and Mrs. Verizon, but this whole thing has become a farcical situation. And that was a change that was put in by George W. Bush. Now, at this time, Nat Hithoff said, why did Obama vote for this eye that never blinks? He had previously vowed to filibuster such a bill, but he said back in July, before he was elected president in November, he voted for that bill. And that was a clue, a tip-off of what was to come from Barack Obama, but he didn't know that at that time. Nat Hithoff, 8 years ago, smelled a rat. And now it really stinks, doesn't it? After 8 years of Barack Obama, the left should be hopping mad about the fact, and some of them are, some journalists are, that Barack Obama used the 1917 Espionage Act more than all other presidents combined to go after journalists and whistleblowers. But he goes on at this time, he says, well, I think this is kind of suspicious. He said the FISA amendment also gave immunity to telecommunications corporations. Now, what have we seen in the wake of this? We've seen the government push throughout the Obama years over and over again. CISA, ACTA, PIPA, and then finally they got it passed with CISA. And that was a way to give immunity to all the people that are collecting information on you so that they would turn it over to the government and you can't sue them for it. See, that's ultimately where they want to go. And you have to understand that the recording of conversations, the recording of your actual email is not nearly as important to them as the metadata. And so you'll see these people saying it's just metadata, it's not important. That is the key thing they're after, because that is what they can analyze algorithmically. He saw that coming 8 years ago and called him out on it. So let's go right now. We've got Alex Jones has joined us. He's on the line. He's traveling. Alex.
David, listening to you break down all these incredible big news stories we've got. I'm only going to be here for a few segments, but I do have just some really important information for everybody. I'm coming across clear to you. Everything coming across clear for you.
Yes, it broke up just a moment, but you're clear now. Go ahead. Can you hear me?
Okay, well, I'm going to just let you go ahead and broadcast until the start of the next segment. Then I'm going to be able to reconfigure some systems here and reconnect with you, because this is some important information. I'll be back after the break. Thank you.
All right, we're going to reconnect with Alex. As I pointed out, he is not in studio today. He is traveling, so we're going to reconnect with Alex. One of the things that you have to understand, as I was saying, the metadata is really what they're after. They can't algorithmically go after your phone calls or your emails as easily as they can the metadata, which tells them essentially what you're doing, where you are, mapping that. That's called geospatial intelligence. That is the fastest growing division of intelligence. And when we look at these massive denial of service attacks that have happened here at InfoWars, and then now Matt Drudge has had that happen at least twice. The first time it happened, it took him down for 90 minutes. And then it happened a few days after that again. When we look at that, the place where that is coming from is your refrigerators and your medical devices and all these things that are called the Internet of Things. We had a story over the holidays from CNBC. Experts warned that 2017 will be the year of smart home hacking. Now, why would they want to get in and look at your thermostat? Do they really care what your temperature is? Well, there are other things that they can derive from that. But more importantly, hackers, and I'm including in this people like the NSA and the CIA, they can get into these machines and they can put viruses in them and they can turn them into spam robots that do requests for services so rapidly targeted at a particular website that they can shut people down from being able to get into that website. That's what the distributed denial of service attacks are about. And so that is the real key. As we see these devices come online, even the medical devices that are coming online, most of them rely on a protocol that's coming out of China. Now, what could happen with that? What could possibly go wrong with putting that on your medical devices and making that a key part of the infrastructure? But it's not just medical devices. It's also your refrigerators, your washing machines. Remember several years ago when David Petraeus was still director of the CIA before he was caught violating national security? He said that they were going to be using your refrigerator to spy on you. Yes, they are. And see, the key thing is for them to get that geospatial intelligence, the activity-based intelligence. They want to look at your activities. They want to look at the entire human domain. Remember we talked about Jade Helm? Mastering the human domain was the subtext of that. They wanted to see, really, what you're doing and map out who their enemies are, who their friends are. That is the key thing that we see developing. And as we go ahead with this, as we see the types of things like now we've got massive snowstorms all throughout the East Coast especially, but really pretty much throughout the entire country. As Drudge Report pointed out, the average temperature is 11 degrees across the United States. But of course, the response to it in Virginia was an algorithm that would raise the toll price there up to $30 to $45 for a half-hour ride. See, that is the key. They're going to go in and they're going to use the roads as an information highway. They're going to collect even more information on you. They're going to have even more power if they want to take down individual sites. That is the true threat. As Donald Trump said, no computer is safe. That ought to be a warning sign for all of us. Stay with us. Alex Jones will be right back.
People have asked me for 20 years, Alex, why don't you have firearms and firearms accessory sponsors? And the answer is, it's a minefield. Well, in 2016, things changed. At Tennessee Arms, that is the founders, the inventors, the leaders, they defended it in court of the resin lowers with the brass inserts that in many cases go further than even aluminum or steel manufacturing. 30 to 60,000 rounds by third-party reviewers. This is the best system out there, and we're talking a third the price of leading competitors. This is how it works. You order, customized or straight from the factory, however you want it. It is shipped on the next business day to you and your family, and a percentage of the profit goes to fund the defense of this republic. You cannot lose. You're funding the info war. You're getting the highest quality product, the most tested, the most durable, the most certified, the most believed in. You need to have this true piece of America ready in minutes.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host. Alex is going to be joining us in this hour to talk about the fight that we now are in the middle of. Folks, it didn't end with the election. As you saw, it only stepped up. And this is a fight we can win. This is a fight that the other side has never had to document what they're saying. And now we can point at them and we can say the emperor has no clothes, the establishment press has no clothes. We're used to documenting what we're telling people because we know that there is a confirmation bias on the part of the public to believe what they're told on these news outlets that have been around for a long time. They've become prestigious because for a very long time, the major networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, even NPR, they were all saying the same thing, weren't they? They were saying exactly what the government was saying. And no matter how absurd it was, they could look at you, look right into that camera and say, that's the way it is. They would say that and people would believe that was the way that it was. And it wasn't. They were very selective about what they were reporting. They were telling you lies some of the time, not all of the time. It's important. When you're telling people lies and you're deceiving them, as we saw, you go back and look at the CIA documents, Operation Mockingbird, you saw how the upper echelons and the anchors of various news media were co-opted by the CIA to get out the stories that they wanted to get out. So it's very important when you're doing that, when you're lying to people, when you've got a propaganda organization, that you do tell people the truth from time to time. So yeah, they did tell the truth from time to time. There you go, Operation Mockingbird. That's something very important to understand, especially in this context, because we are now, as I pointed out in one of the videos we did a couple of weeks ago, I said, this is Operation Mockingbird Part 2. This is on steroids now, folks. We now have the State Department having been given, and of course it was Republicans who were supporting this, even